Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the Sweet Nothings podcast. This is your home, if you had forgotten or you didn't know in the first place, of relaxed, funny, and informative chats all about the love of eating. We'll talk about the latest food trends, controversial opinions, and all things edible. My name is Kelly. You might know me otherwise as Maverick Baking on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, whatever, where I share recipes and food challenges and chocolate bar reviews and various other nonsense like that. If that's your kind of thing, feel free to check it out. But otherwise, I like to whisper sweet nothings in your ear about just about everything you can physically swallow. As I'm sharing this with you, it is the day after Halloween, or if I've been particularly lazy with my editing this week, it's the day after Halloween. Hopefully, you're not all helplessly hungover, but I hope you all had a good time dressing up and getting too drunk, or staying at home and eating too many sweets by yourself. Both are equally as fantastic, in my opinion. And I couldn't avoid the subject of Halloween in this month's episode. Of course, there are things happening in terms of food news and food trends otherwise, but every single thing just seems to revert back to, pumpkins and slime and edible blood this month. And while those aren't necessarily my topics of expertise, they are very fun to examine. So once we've gotten into this month's kind of food trends and some of the slightly good food news this month, I would love to talk a little bit about Halloween food, the good, the bad, and the utterly terrifying, including some of the new products that have been launched by various kind of big UK and US retailers this month, some being fun, spooky, festive, love it, and others being confusing and truly, utterly terrifying. But before we get into that, I hope you all had a great time on this hallowed eve. And let's talk about the food trends we have seen this month, separate to those of Halloween. One of my favorites I've seen that I actually noticed quite late into the month of October is the homemade jelly boba tea phenomenon that has been all over TikTok. As usual, TikTok is still dominating food trends. Instagram, Facebook, other social media are not really offering the same titans of trending food silliness that TikTok tends to do on a regular basis. And I believe this started back in September, but only really caught kind of full traction in October. Jelly boba tea, of course, being one of the kind of variants of boba tea that you can find in the Asian bubble tea places or boba tea places that are likely in pretty much every big city near you because they are everywhere just now. So I'm talking about the kind of big cups of sweetened, milky or fruity tea that have either the bursting kind of juice bubbles, little jelly chunks, or those traditional kind of chewy black tapioca balls in them. Specifically those with the little kind of sweetened sugary jelly cubes. People have found a pretty kind of cute and fun way to make this at home. Of course, people have probably been doing this in East Asia for a lot longer than I've been aware of it, but but it's spreading throughout the world a bit more now, and I really enjoyed the way that people were making these. So essentially in a kind of tall glass at home or one of these glass mason jars that everyone seems to have in their kitchen these days, people are kind of making a classic jello, gelatin thing in the base, whatever flavor you like, whether it's, strawberry, orange, mango, any of these, just standard kind of powdered jelly stuff. Make a really small portion of it in your glass or your glass jar. And once it's set in the fridge, they're pouring over the kind of sweetened milk tea recipe, whatever flavor, consistency, or texture they like. And they're pouring that over before then stabbing with ideally either a pretty sturdy plastic straw or, better for the environment, a kind of metal or glass straw, piercing holes in that set jelly with the milk tea poured on top, and then just basically swirling quite aggressively the jelly. So it won't combine into some, that kind of horrible jelly and ice cream mixture that all British children have been either willingly or force-fed at some point in their life. But you get those little kind of jelly chunks and jelly cubes that you can then sip through your straw alongside the milk tea, and you don't have to go out and pay like £4 or £5 or, $6 to $8 for it. It's really cute. It's a bit more faff than a lot of people would go to just to prepare a nice kind of cold drink at home, especially as we get into the colder months. But it's been really fun to watch people kind of play with flavor and texture combinations and stuff. And it's something I'll probably end up doing one evening I'm in the flat by myself, just for the sake of trying it. Another food trend that I've seen all over TikTok, which has been pretty amusing, has been the kind of ASMR nori rice eating thing. Now, I don't mean just the horrible ASMR eating sounds, those do make me not only nauseous but homicidal. But I'm talking about people kind of sitting with a bowl of rice or a bowl of, kind of fried rice with other stuff through it, or just your kind of classic sushi rice, eating it with chopsticks or with a fork, and having those kind of crispy rectangular nori sheets. So not exactly the stuff that you would see wrapped around sushi rolls or wrapped inside sushi rolls, but the kind of crispy seaweed rectangles you get. You can see them either as like a very kind of low calorie diet snack or something that some people kind of crumble up over noodles or something to give it that lovely kind of crispy and really savory umami flavor and texture. So people are taking a forkful or chopstickful of rice, and rather than putting it on this kind of crispy seaweed thing and then in their mouth, or wrapping it, or sprinkling the seaweed thing over the rice, they're essentially putting the seaweed thing over their mouth and shoving the rice into their mouth through that, so that you get this wrapped mouthful without any faff in every single bite. It's very satisfying to watch. It looks and sounds delicious when they're eating it. And it also brings me back wonderful memories of that girl who went viral on TikTok for eating duck pancakes like an absolute animal. That instead of, if you don't know what I'm talking about with that, there was a girl who, whenever she orders a Chinese takeaway, I believe she was English, whenever she orders a Chinese takeaway, she doesn't take the kind of thin duck pancakes, assemble in the spring onion, the cucumber, the hoisin sauce, the duck, and then roll it into a little kind of roll and then eat it. Instead, she put the actual pancake, the full pancake, over her mouth and took a forkful of the duck and the cucumber and the sauce and just shoved it straight into the pancake and into her mouth. So instead of having to wrap it with her hands, she made this sort of just nature mouth-made wrap in one huge bite, and it just, the sushi rice with nori thing is reminding me of that, and I like it. It's efficiency, it's speed, and it's knowing how to get your textures and flavors in every single mouthful in the most efficient way. So I've enjoyed very much seeing those videos. They're also very calming for some reason. In terms of food news, there hasn't been a whole lot of controversy going on in the UK with food news other than the prices and the collapse of literally everything else. So it's been a bit dry in terms of food. However, I did pick up that Nestle, one of the world's best and most ethical brands, have decided to finally catch up with the kind of lower waste program as late as 2022. And their Quality Street brand, which I believe is available all year round, but is only ever really bought and eaten at Christmas time and, New Year in the UK, because one of the things we just need to have on hand at all times is a tub or tin of plastic wrapped chocolate. It's one of my favourite silly traditions. Now, Quality Street have decided after decades to ditch their iconic kind of plastic wrappers for a recyclable natural wax coated paper. They claim that this will save 2 billion plastic wrappers from going to landfill on average in years to come. And honestly, this could be one step in the right direction. I don't think it solves all issues. Their ethics around their chocolate making for both the environment and their workers and the farmers they trade with are still horrendous. But at least, this is a very surface level and very publicly visible attempt at trying to reduce their waste. I don't believe they'll be changing the material of the plastic tubs that they sell the sweets in. And in having 2 billion plastic wrappers saved from landfill, We will still have the waste of the paper wrappers. I guess it's just that they will be somewhat biodegradable or recyclable. So it's, as I said, a very small and very visible step in the right direction. But whether it's enough after all this time, I don't really know. And I'm also led to believe from the articles I've read that the plastic wrappers, or actually the foil wrappers, will be maintained for two of the classic Quality Street chocolates, that being the Orange Crunch, that one that has the kind of milk chocolate coating with the moussey, kind of crispy rice orange filled thing, and the Green Triangle, which is essentially the same thing but with tiny pieces of hazelnut and some hazelnut flavouring added in there. They, at the moment, are wrapped in coloured foil, and they will apparently remain in coloured foil. I don't know why. I don't know if this is a design choice, if it's, a logistics choice. I really don't know. But they will remain in their respective orange foil and green foil, but the rest will be wrapped in recyclable paper. However, they go on again to explain that it will not be entirely carried out by the time that all of these tubs and tins are shipped out for this Christmas. So if you get a tub of Quality Street yourself, you get it as a gift, you find it in the office or wherever you work, it says that there will be a mix of wrappers. Now, I don't know if that means in every single tin or tub, or that some tins and tubs will be like the old style, all plastic and foil, and some will be the all paper and foil, or if it means that we'll have physical mixed up sweets in each single one, so that we'll have the paper, the plastic, and the foil in some tubs and tins. I'm really not sure what it means. Either way, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Is this enough? Is this just quite a performative attempt at reducing waste and appearing more environmentally friendly and modern? I lean slightly to more, the second option personally, but it's interesting to see that moves like this are being made, and it will be interesting to see how they look, how consumers respond to that, and if it's something that they'll then kind of stretch out to their other products, because Nestle have a hell of a lot of chocolate products, not just Quality Street, so we can keep an eye on that. But something I've been thinking about before we get into the kind of best and the worst of this year's new novelty foodstuffs, is there a kind of iconic Halloween treat or iconic Halloween flavors? I feel like because of the influence of American culture in the UK, we do have a lot more kind of pumpkin flavored stuff, whether that's in terms of, savory things such as pumpkin soups and, everything we can do with pumpkins and squashes that are abundant at this time of year, and in sweet things such as pumpkin pie, pumpkin spice lattes, blah, blah, blah. But is pumpkin an autumn flavor or is it a Halloween flavor? Are seasonal apple pies a Halloween food? Is there something that makes us think this tastes like Halloween? Because I've been struggling to think of one while I was, doing a little bit of planning for this month's episode. I didn't celebrate Halloween much as a child. Mother, if you're listening, you know why. It's your fault. But I couldn't bring myself to think if, even for a tradition that is so old, why we don't have iconic flavors for Halloween as we do for any of the other kind of big annual festivals such as Easter or Christmas, in the UK at least. When I think of British flavors of Christmas, I think immediately of mince pies. The big ones or the little small ones, the ones with icing, the ones with marzipan, the ones that are just wrapped in that really kind of cheap but delicious short crust pastry. I think of Terry's chocolate oranges. I think of chocolate reindeer. I think of Christmas puddings, of shortbread, of, even more American influences such as candy canes and big boxes of chocolates like the Quality Street we were talking about. I think of all of those kinds of things when I think of the flavors, the textures, the treats that we only really eat at Christmas time. With Easter, you have chocolate eggs, whether they're the big ones wrapped in foil you get in the big cardboard boxes from the supermarket, or those foil wrapped chocolate bunnies, more traditional things like simnel cake, or more specific and very novelty flavors such as cream eggs in the UK, and of course mini eggs that have such an iconic and very specific time of year flavor between usually February to May, or February to April. And these are all things you can only taste at those specific times of year or those specific months, those specific kind of festivities. And, while Cadbury, for example, repackage cream eggs for Halloween and call them goo heads, they don't taste any different. And are they Halloweeny? Is there any specific Halloween flavor? I know that in the US, for example, US listeners, you'll have candy corn and things like that we all saw in cartoons growing up. But is there a specific and iconic Halloween treat that we all look forward to that we don't have available or that we just don't really entertain at other times of year? And I wondered if that was because Halloween isn't as old or archaic a tradition as the celebration of Easter or of Christmas, but Halloween in its various shapes and forms is a very bloody old tradition, a very old kind of festivity. It's not something that's just appeared in the last 50 years. But I also wondered, maybe part of the reason that nothing sticks for Halloween, at least in the modern day, is because the joy of Halloween is the novelty. You rarely, or at least most folks, rarely wear the same costume, 2 years in a row. We rarely have the same kind of celebration 2 years in a row, whereas for Christmas, a lot of people tend to do the same thing every single year, and that's part of what they enjoy about it. Do we kind of make it this novelty holiday that doesn't have the same traditional elements, even if it is a tradition almost as old or older than Christmas and Easter? I don't really know. I don't really know why nothing seems to stick. And as I said, maybe there is something I'm genuinely overlooking because Halloween's something I only really started, partaking in and celebrating as an older teenager and as an adult. But do let me know your thoughts. I genuinely could not think of something that is the iconic Halloween flavor, texture, treat, whatever it is. And I think that's something that also leads to brands desperately creating something new to kind of break into that market of trying to have something that will have a foothold for years to come. As has been achieved at Christmas time, Cadbury release relatively new things every single Christmas, for example. And a few tend to stick because if you throw enough at something, something will stick. But I don't know if that is the case for Halloween. You'll see the same kinds of things being released every year or just stuff in new packaging. They'll stick a few bats in front of it or they'll turn something black or green for a month, which, it's fine. Is it enough for it to stick? Is it enough for it to be a tradition? I don't really know. So that being said, amongst all of the kind of repackaged things that you'll see this year, the only things this year that I have seen that I've kind of liked the idea of, I've liked the novelty, I've liked the look, I've liked the effect, are threefold. And as are the utterly confusing and terrifying alternatives from other companies that I will get into very soon. In terms of the fun, the spooky, and the good this Halloween, Haribo, as they often do, just because they have so many products, as I said, you throw enough at something, it's going to stick. They have released this year some sour monsters, as they're calling them. They've also released another kind of, fizzy sugar-coated version of some spooky Halloween-shaped things. And they've also released a new pack of their kind of pinball things that are green, orange, and black in keeping with kind of Halloween themes and even Halloween flavors. The little orange pinballs are, I believe, blood orange flavors. The green ones are like sour apple, and the black ones I think are either blackcurrant or licorice or something like that. So not only are they, they're looking the part. The molded ones, the sour monsters, and the other little fizzy things are not just the cherries and the cola bottles repackaged with a little Frankenstein on the front. They've actively got Halloweeny molds for these things so that they look like, eyeballs or monsters or these different colored pinballs. And the flavors even seem to reflect somewhat seasonal or somewhat kind of divisive and appropriate flavors for spooky season, which I think is good. For an enormous company like them, they literally do not have to go to that effort because they already have novelty ticked in every single box. They have so many products, people will buy them, and they're a very easy sweet for people to give out to kids, to trick-or-treaters or at parties, whatever. But they've actually put a good amount of effort in, and it's nice to see that. It's all very appropriate. It's all, it's all within theme. Similarly, slightly unrelated to sweets or to food, but still in the food and drink niche, we have two new products this year, which I think are Again, great in keeping with the theme, a decent effort from the companies that are putting them out. For example, Bacardi. Bacardi already have a pretty spooky logo as it is. I believe their logo is just a bat, like a full span bat. And while, kids might not think of rum on Halloween, us older folks certainly do, or any excuse to put spirits into colourful drinks and, call it a new occasion. But Bacardi, though they haven't released a new flavour of rum or a new kind of rum, what they've done with some of their bottles this month is they've made the logos and they've put bats all over the bottles and they're glow in the dark. So if you're at a party, if you're in a club, there will be glow in the dark bats all over these Bacardi bottles. Is it the most amount of effort they could have put in? No. But in terms of an alcohol company, which again, people will buy, if people are having Halloween parties, if people are going to clubs to drink and to dress up on Halloween, there's going to be rum there. But the fact that they've put a little bit of effort into just, making it a bit more seasonally appropriate and more so than brands that, in my opinion, need to put in more effort, I thought this was a pretty cool idea. Similarly, there is a new alcoholic liqueur from Sacla. Now, Sacla, or I believe it might actually be Sacla, are an Italian company that trade in the UK, most famously for their kind of pasta sauces, and I think above all their pesto, their green and red pesto, every student's absolute cupboard staple. They have released a licorice flavored liqueur called the Madonna Nera, which means the Black Madonna or the Black Virgin Mary. And I love this for a couple of reasons. I don't normally talk about alcohol and alcoholic products on the podcast or on my YouTube channel generally because I'm not an expert in these things, but I think this product is so great for a couple of reasons. Not only is the name and the kind of the packaging of the product really quite controversial in terms of being an Italian company and putting something like this out, in terms of the name, in terms of the fact that the Madonna, she looks almost zombie-like on the packaging. I love this. I think it perfectly fits not only the kind of, the seasonally appropriate darkness of Halloween, but also the fact that it is a little bit spooky and playing with the religious element, I think is brave and also quite effective in being seasonally appropriate. And the fact that they've made it licorice flavored, again, wonderfully divisive, scary for people like me who don't like licorice. And they suggest to serve it cold and it will become, this thick, I imagine probably maybe the texture of Baileys or something like that, something thick and sticky and strong with licorice flavor, which even just as a non-Halloween loving licorice lover must be delicious. But they even recommend freezing a whole bottle and pouring shots of this liqueur out when it's frozen, which apparently makes it so thick that it's almost chewy. Now, I had to read it twice as well because I thought, girl, huh? But I think that's a great idea. As I said, for a non-licorice lover, that is horrifying. And Halloween is all about the horrific. So, but the thought of something that physically changes texture intentionally to be drunk frozen so that this licorice liqueur is obviously something very adult in its flavour and alcohol content, but also has somewhat of that childish kind of sweetie element to it being sticky and almost chewy when you serve it. I think it's fantastic. I don't know if I'll be able to find it anywhere, on sale afterwards, or I might buy some online. Even as someone who doesn't love licorice, I just think that's such a daring and really cool product to bring out when they're not normally in the alcohol market, and when the alcohol market is always doing just fine anyway, but also just the whole theme, the flavor, the texture. I think it's all bold and it's all daring, and I think that is exactly the kind of thing that we need at this time of year. But aside from the things that I thought were great and innovative and interesting, even as someone who doesn't like those particular flavors, let's talk about the things that are confusing and utterly terrifying. The first being an absolute staple on this podcast, if you've been listening, or if you've listened or binge watched the episodes on YouTube, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere. It's time for, I believe, what is either the third or the fourth return of Marks and Spencer's Colin the Bloody Caterpillar. We spoke about this during Marks and Spencer's crusade against Aldi, and I think, even their attempt at other supermarkets, because every supermarket has a version of Colin the Caterpillar. I don't know what this cake has done to the British public to have us in such a chokehold, but it does. Marks and Spencer have some kind of soul contract with the devil on Colin the Caterpillar and his various forms, and they have brought him out again for Halloween. And instead of just being a caterpillar that they could have made creepy, they could have done any other thing with a caterpillar. In fact, they could have just bought a new cake mold and made it anything else. They could have done a rat, a bat, anything that's a little bit horrific, anything that's still, somewhat child appropriate or easy to slice. They could have made him a worm. They could have made him something more gross and creepy crawly for Halloween. They could have done a lot of things. But instead, what they've done is they've made him a mummy. as in an ancient Egyptian mummy. What they've done is they've taken the standard they've taken a standard Colin the Caterpillar cake and wrapped it in an extra layer of bandage effect white chocolate to make mummified, large and miniature Colin the Caterpillars. They could have made Colin the Cocoon. That would have made more sense because he's a caterpillar. They could have put him in this kind of creepy cocoon thing and made it Halloween, made it spooky, made the metamorphosis of small insects, the passage of time, the passage from life to death at an accelerating speed. They could have made that the theme, but they didn't. They've mummified. I love the absurd, but they have mummified a chocolate caterpillar. When's it going to stop? When's it going to stop? What are we going to have for Christmas at this point? Are we going to have Caterpillar Santa? Is Santa's sleigh going to be pulled exclusively by oversized caterpillars this year? Why is it a caterpillar? Why does he need to appear and be redressed for every festivity? I don't understand. Marks and Spencer's also released something that could have been quite innovative and cool, but they again just threw caution and reason to the wind in their zombie brain dessert that I've seen shared on their Instagram and things otherwise. So the zombie brain is like this giant pink and red fruity flavored jelly that you pour a kind of package or sachet of fruity sauce over the top to look like blood, and when you scoop into it, with a big wobbly gross looking jelly thing. Great idea for kids parties, great idea for a kind of easy dessert if you're over the age of 10 as well. I would genuinely eat it. It's a decent idea, but the problem is instead of filling it just with a couple of different flavors of jelly and having a decent brain mold and things like that, they filled it with eyeballs. Now, again, that's not to say I don't want to eat a fruity flavoured jelly eyeball. I will do that with both pleasure and enthusiasm. Why is it inside a brain? Or what does that have to do with a zombie? Surely a zombie brain wouldn't be pink and fleshy and bleeding. Surely it would be, several shades of grey and green and blue and purple and other things, which again could have been cool, really cool, could have incorporated loads of flavours, or they could have had different flavours of the zombie brain. No, instead, they made just a brain, a sweet jelly brain, and they put eyeballs inside it. Why would there be eyeballs in the brain, M&S? Tell me. If you'd made a whole skull, you could have had 2 eyeballs within the skull, but instead when you look at this thing, there's like 5 or 6 jelly eyeballs inside a brain. Why? A witch's cauldron jelly idea could have had, blood and fingers and eyeballs and stuff in there, but a brain full of eyes? It's like their PR team was on this like horrendous mission to make however many products they could, and they ended up having to squeeze some into others. They're probably decent, they'll fit the theme anyway, but I just thought those 2 particular products, being a mummified caterpillar and a brain full of eyeballs, either I'm just getting really dull in my opinions, or that I thought those were slightly too absurd. Moving on to my personal beef with M&S though, Starbucks are also on my hit list this Halloween. Last year, I think they did a pretty decent looking Frappuccino, if I remember rightly. It, might not have been particularly seasonal flavors, but they had this sort of bloody Dracula Frappuccino that had like a chocolate finger sticking out at the top. This year, one of the products they have made is a kind of gingerbread skeleton biscuit, which kind of looks the part and I think is also an appropriate flavor for the season. But they've also released a couple of products that just have irritated me in unreasonable amounts. The first of these being their sour apple frappuccino. I know Starbucks don't only make coffee-based drinks, but I feel like a sour apple frappuccino is just not what anyone is going into a Starbucks for. Surely if you want a sour apple flavor, you'd be picking up, a smoothie or some juice or like Monster or any of the other big energy drinks for a kind of sour, juicy flavor. But instead, they've decided to make their icy, creamy, kind of fluffy, aerated frappuccino mixture sour apple flavored. Now, it's a very interesting neon green color, which I have to give them, but I just don't understand why it had to be a sour apple. The Haribo sweets we spoke about earlier, a sour apple flavor, that makes sense. It's a sweet. But a creamy, sour thing just to me sounds like you've made a blue cheese milkshake. The color is enticing, especially for kids and things, but are kids your target market? I don't know. I really don't know. So there's no coffee in this Starbucks drink. And instead of what could have been delicious, they could have gone apple pie. They could have gone apple crumble flavored. They could have still made it that vibrant green flavor, but just made it an appropriate October apple flavor. Or maybe this is just me, but even as someone who absolutely loves sour flavors, I love all things lemon, all things vinegary, all things pickled. But the thought of like a sour, creamy, ice cream based drink is mm-mm. Also, why are you putting out cold drinks in the UK in late October? I know the climate is changing faster than we can keep up with, but no one wants a sour ice cream like drink like that on like the 30th of October in Northern England, for example. Do they? Maybe they do. I don't know. And the other the other Starbucks product that has been grinding my gears this month is their chocolate muffin that they brought out for Halloween. You might think, Kelly, what could possibly grind your gears about a chocolate muffin? The chocolate muffin, aside from that sharp candy apple flavored thing with a black drizzle in terms of the drink that they've put out, this muffin is a chocolate muffin with dark chocolate chunks injected with chocolate filling, topped with a chocolate blob and a chocolate tombstone. You can tell the kind of the test chefs or whatever they're called who make these products. I don't think they're the ones who came up with the copy. A chocolate blob? Anyway, so it looks okay. It looks kind of cute. Starbucks chocolate muffins are generally pretty decent. They're always a nice size. They're nice to have with a coffee. Chocolate injection and chocolate blob aside. The chocolate tombstone looks kind of cute. It feels seasonally appropriate. It's the kind of thing I think that most of us would like to be eating in this time of year because you want comfort and stodge and, dark and cozy flavors rather than cold, sour things, at least in my own personal experience. My problem with this product, it's not the product itself. My problem is the name. They have called this the Rest in Chocolate Muffin. Think of that what you will. Rest in chocolate is not a thing, and we're not about to make it a thing. This could have been two far superior names with 20 seconds of my own non-PR or marketing trained brain. You could have called it the Rest in Pieces muffin because there are quite literally pieces of chocolate through it. It still would have been a bit of a stretch in terms of the naming, but it could have been that. It could have been the Rest in Peanut or the Rest in Peanut Butter muffin. You could have thrown some peanut in there. Anything like that would have been more appropriate than rest in chocolate. You could have just called it the chocolate grave muffin. You could have called it the chocolate tombstone. Anything. Rest in chocolate neither rolls off the tongue or makes any sense. You could have just called it the rest in peace muffin, the big rip muffin. But for someone to have to go in and literally say, can I get the rest in chocolate muffin? What? What? That, yeah, really, I know I'm clutching at straws potentially here, but I did think that was truly just the laziest of naming. But the final product I want to talk about is actually, unfortunately, from a brand that I have very much enjoyed before, because I know that I like to rip on the big brands on this podcast and on my YouTube channel, because in my opinion, they deserve it. They have the biggest budget, they have the biggest PR and marketing teams, and they still manage to mess it up so many times. But there is a company, a tea company, who have truly blown all of the other questionable Halloween product things of this year out of the water, in my opinion. The company I'm talking about is Bird and Blend. Bird and Blend are a kind of, think of craft beer. They essentially make craft tea. So they don't just sell kind of fancy tea bags like Twinings or Puka, whatever the kind of standard supermarket tea brands are. Bird and Blend do sell tea bags, but their niche is handcrafted loose tea blends, the kind that you would have in a kind of French press thing, in a proper teapot or a proper strainer, anything like that. And don't get me wrong, their tea is delicious. I have ordered from them a few times as an avid tea drinker. They have some cake and biscuit flavored things and some lovely fruity and floral and herbal flavored teas that are absolutely gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. Both the loose leaf, the bags, everything I've had from them has been great. However, because obviously they source their tea a bit better than other companies and they're putting a lot more effort into the packaging, the flavouring, the seasonality, everything, and their social media is usually pretty good if I remember rightly. So I am not calling out the brand specifically, but the product they decided to put out for Halloween has raised my eyebrows so far off my head I can't find them anymore. They have released for Halloween a tea advent calendar. And there are so many absurdities with this that I truly cannot begin to wrap my head around why this was a decision. Now, I believe that Bird and Blend do actually have a tea calendar for the actual Advent period, which makes sense because, 12 to 24 to 31 days of tea blends makes sense. That's the time of year you want to drink it, and you could have different themes, different flavors, things like that. It makes sense. But an Advent calendar in October is bizarre. What day would you start on? Would you start on the 1st of October and have a different tea drink all the way up to the 31st? No, because the Bird and Blend tea advent calendar only has 13 doors, boxes, things to open. So you start on the 18th of October? Or do you just start in October and open them when you like? Or do you open all 13 on the 31st of October? I don't understand. Or have they made these 13 different containers because 13 is that kind of unlucky number for some things, and that's Halloween appropriate? I have no idea. If they'd made 31, fine. If they'd made 10, which could even be understandable as a round number, fine. But to produce a 13-day countdown calendar of tea in October for Halloween, designed like a graveyard, is absurd enough, much like Marks and Spencer's product, but they are also charging for this tea calendar £52. £52. Now, I understand, as I said, this is a craft product. It is a high quality product, absolutely. But who is your market? Who is in the market for this? Advent calendars are typically for children, for teenagers, or for adults who love chocolate or love novelty, love Christmas, whatever. A tea advent calendar would be for tea lovers. Are tea lovers and people who want a graveyard themed 13-day Halloween countdown calendar the same niche? I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea if this makes any sense. I can't think who would buy this. I understand the product has to be expensive. It's a high quality product. There's no problem with that. And it's not all miniatures that's contained within this kind of kit calendar thing. I believe there are full size products, fair enough. 52 Great British pounds for 13 different tea products for Halloween. I have no idea who this is for. Maybe they've sold well. Maybe they have a loyal customer base who wanted to buy this, but how this got through as the number one idea for Halloween marketing, I have no idea. And though I love Bird and Blends tea, this to me was just crazy. Absolutely crazy. But clearly, someone must be buying it. But that rant, that confused ramble aside, those are all of the both fun and spooky and confusing and utterly terrifying products that we have seen released newly this year for Halloween. Do let me know if I've missed any. Leave me a comment on social media. If you're watching this on YouTube, drop me a comment below, send me an email, whatever you like. I'd love to know your thoughts, both on why there is no iconic Halloween treat and why some of these products are so absolutely nuts this year. Of course, and as always, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget you can find me all over social media, and don't forget to check out any previous episodes of the Sweet Nothings podcast, and don't forget to check out for the next episode next month. It will be great to see you again. Thank you, as always, so much for listening. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here and to talk to you all, to whisper these sweet nothings into your ear. I hope you all had a lovely Halloween, and I will speak to you again as we get into the depths of the festive winter period. Have a lovely time. Ever thought about starting your own podcast? Let me tell you about Buzzsprout. Buzzsprout is the easiest and best way to launch, promote, and track your podcast and everything about it. Just record your audio and Buzzsprout will help you do all the rest. Your voice can be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and other platforms in literally just a few minutes. I've been using Buzzsprout ever since starting the Sweet Nothings podcast and have never even considered working with any other podcast hosts since. If you want to try podcasting for yourself, just check out the affiliate link in the show notes or the description to get started.